Yes, welcome to another video. In this lesson, I want to talk about the false prophet of the book of Revelation, and I'm going to focus more on the book of Revelation 20, although I'm going to cover the 3 times that the false prophet is mentioned because many people say that the false prophet is the Catholic Church, and in reality, religion in general is not included in prophecies because, as I will teach you more in a moment, all religions in general are controlled by the elite. They have a hierarchy of levels, and all religions, and the highest level, are controlled by the world elite. That there are some that call the Illuminati, well, the Amalekites, who control the world, the Edomites. So in reality, it is part of the beast. It is part of the 4th beast of Daniel 2 and Daniel 7, and in reality, the Catholic Church is not included in prophecies. Let's explain. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to explain in detail the entire chapter 20 once the false prophet arrives. So let's see where that idea of the false prophet comes from and where it is mentioned in Revelation, which is in chapter 16:19 and 20. Revelation 20. Verse 1, I saw an angel coming down from heaven, having the key to the abyss and a great chain in his hand. And he caught the dragon, who is talking here about Rome, the 4th beast, and the Edomites in general, because it talks about the dragon and it talks about the serpent, who are the Edomites, and he caught the dragon, the ancient serpent, who is talking about Cain, who later reincarnated as Esau, who is the devil and Satan, and he tied him up for 1,000 years. One thing you have to understand is that here in Revelation 20, it talks about 2 sets of 1,000 years, but they are different. It talks about 1,000 years when Satan is tied up, and it talks about 1,000 years after the Messiah returns, and I'm going to explain the difference here. It continues with the 1,000 years, and he caught the dragon and threw it into the abyss, that is Revelation 20 verse 3, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years be fulfilled, and after he must be loosed a little season. So these 1,000 years here is when the Edomites fell. They fell in a time where they themselves call it the Middle Ages, medieval times. When blacks reigned Europe, they were poor at that time, which was more or less 1,000 years according to the 4th book of Esdras that mentions the 4th beast. Esdras mentions 3 phases. He mentions a phase of the 12 Caesars, and after that it jumps to the empires of the Renaissance, and the last phase are the 3 strongest empires among the Edomites, which are Russia, England, and the United States. But according to the 4th book of Esdras 11 and 12, the first phase ends after the 12 Caesars, which was like the year 96 AD, but always after a kingdom falls. It does not fall all of a sudden. It always takes a few years to conquer, in which one race conquers the other race. The same thing happened in the Renaissance. You can say that the Renaissance actually began during the time of the Florentine bankers in the 1200s, but they didn't really conquer until the year that Spain began to conquer the New World. But to get to that point, it took them several years to get there. The same thing happened after the 12 Caesars. The Edomites began to fall, and the Israelites didn't take full control of all of Europe until the time of Constantine, like the year 300 AD. So, more or less from the year 300 AD and 1,000 years later, the Edomites began to rise again at the time of the Renaissance. That's what he's talking about here, about these 1,000 years. And now, as you notice, he's talking about a totally different subject. He's talking about the end of the world and the return of the Messiah. And here it says, and I saw thrones, and they sat on them, and judgment was given to them, and I saw the souls of those who were beheaded for the testimony of Yahweh Shai, and for the word of God, and those who they had not worshipped the beast nor his image, and had not received his mark on their foreheads or on their hands. So here he is talking about the day of judgment, that the mark of the beast is not going to be implemented in a time in the past. It is going to be more or less one of the last things that happened before the Messiah returns. And here he speaks of another time of 1,000 years, and they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. Right now I'm going to explain it, because these 1,000 years, he continues speaking of those 1,000 years until here, they are different from the 1,000 years that Satan was bound in the Middle Ages. They are another 1,000 years right now. I'm going to explain it, but the other dead did not come back to life until the 1,000 years were up, and this is the first resurrection. There is a scripture that says that the dead in the truth are going to rise first, so those who died is because here he is talking about those who died by the testimony of Yahuwah. Those are going to be the first that are going to be resurrected. They are going to live the first resurrection. That is why. Here it says, blessed and holy he who has part in the first resurrection. Why? Because the second death, which is nuclear war and the end of the age, has no power over them. But they will be priests of God and of Christ, and they will reign with him 1,000 years, because it continues mentioning 1,000 years. Because over here in the time of Joshua, here it was shown to him that during the return of the Messiah, here it is that during the return of the Messiah, Yahuwah was going to take away the sin of the earth in one day. It says, behold, I am bringing my servant the Reverend, who is the Messiah. So when the Messiah returns, he says that he will take away the sin of the earth in one day. And what does one day mean? One day here in 2 Peter 3 verse 8 it says that with the Lord 1 day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like 1 day. So these 1,000 years is the time that it will last to take away the sin of the earth after the Messiah returns. And here he returns to another 1,000 years. Here he returns to the 1,000 years where Satan was tied, and after those 1,000 years Satan will be released, which is the Renaissance from his prison. And here we are going to talk about the false prophet, and he will go out to deceive the nations that he is talking about. The white race, the Edomites, during the Renaissance, the first thing they did to deceive the nations is what is called something called iconoclasm. They went to change all the images of the children of God throughout Europe. Because the blacks reigned Europe, they began to paint all the images of the people of God, that especially the Jews who were black began to paint them as white people, which is something that they had already done when they reigned under the Greeks. They did that at that time too, and it is mentioned in the book of the Maccabees that they painted the people of God as if they were white. That is one of the first deceptions that they did. That is why when they conquered the New World, they indoctrinated the indigenous and the slaves with images. That is why it was so important to them that people will worship images, because if people worship images and the images are of your race, then they're going to worship your race. If people had their saints and their messiahs and everyone was black, everyone would look at black people differently. But now all churches have white saints. This is part of the deception, and it will go out to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, and Gog and Magog, in order to gather them together for battle, the number of which is as the sand of the sea. Here it already jumps to the Third World War, which included Russia, and they went up over the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of the saints and the beloved city, and from God fire came down from heaven and consumed them. Here he is talking about the same thing that Daniel 7 and Daniel 2 talk about, that the last beast at the end is punished and destroyed, and the one who deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire. They are the Edomites. This is the same beast that is described in Daniel 2, Daniel 7, the fourth book of Esdras. More or less from here, this is the fourth beast, but the fourth beast has its 10 empires and the United States, then starting with Rome, the 10 empires and the United States, that is the harlot, and the beast who deceived them was thrown into the fire and brimstone, where there was the beast. Talking about the beast of Daniel, the fourth beast, and the false prophet. Here are two, but in reality they are one. They are like phases. It is better explained in Daniel. Right now we are going to go there. Here it only says that it is the false prophet, and they will be tormented day and night for ages and ages. To better explain the false prophet, you have to see what it says in Revelation 16, in Revelation 19. In Revelation 16, the false prophet describes it in this way that I am not going to read the whole chapter because it goes on too long, but in reality it is talking about the great Babylon. That is, it is talking about the fourth beast of Daniel that includes Rome, the 10 empires, and the last Babylon, the great one, which is The United States, and here it clarifies it more in 16, although here it talks about the prophet in reality. It is talking about the great Babylon, and what does it say here about the false prophet, and I saw come out of the mouth of the dragon? That the dragon is Rome, and out of the mouth of the beast, which is the fourth beast, that these are like three ways of describing the same thing. The dragon, the beast, and now includes the false prophet are three unclean spirits. So here you already have a connection of the fourth beast, which is the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet, which are three unclean spirits. And another thing that describes here is that these spirits of demons performed great signs. So although it is like three ways of describing this beast that begins with Rome, and it is actually the entire beast. That includes the 10 empires, but here it speaks of a mouth of the false prophet that. This is described in Daniel 7 when he speaks of one of the horns that comes out of the 10 horns that has a mouth that speaks great things. Right now we are going to get into that, and those are three unclean spirits. And what do these unclean spirits do? Rome actually no longer exists, but the 10 exist, the 10 horns, and the United States, which in general is Europe. And the United States, what do these Edomite empires do? Well, they are spirits of demons that perform signs. What signs do they do? It is talking about warlike signs, for example, when it bombed Japan. When the United States bombed Japan, absolutely everyone defecated, nobody wanted to confront the United States. After that, the United States became like a god. Those are the great signs that these spirits of demons perform, and they go to the kings of the earth all over the world to gather them together for battle on that great day of God Almighty. In other words, these demons, which are the empires, this Europe and the United States, are the ones that put the whole world into the Third World War, which is the war of Armageddon. Now what I wanted to explain to you is, how do you know that this false prophet is nothing more than the fourth beast, especially the last phase of the fourth beast, which is the United States, because it says here that it has a mouth, and herein Daniel it describes it more clearly. Here it also says about the 10 horns. Well, it writes it in Daniel 7 and 8. Here it says, "While I was contemplating the horns, behold, another little horn came up among them, which is the United States." In other words, the first 10 horns are the 10 Renaissance empires, and of those 10 the United States came up. Behold, another little horn came up among them, which is the United States, and before it 3 of the first horns were plucked up, which is England, Spain, and France. And behold, this horn had the eyes of a man and a mouth speaking great things. There is the connection of the false prophet. The false prophet is the United States. Here in Daniel 7, verse 20, it says something similar. Likewise, about the 10 horns that were on its head and the other that had come up, which is the United States, we have already described that it took down 3 of them. This one had eyes and a mouth speaking great things, and it seemed greater than all its companions. In other words, this false prophet was greater than all of these. Although we already know that Russia destroys them at the end, but it was greater than all of these. Another way that we know that the false prophet is the United States is that the United States is the one that makes war against the saints. The saints are the black people. Especially in the United States, the black people, the indigenous people, and later the Latinos as well. Because they were the ones who enslaved the blacks, took the land from the indigenous people, and then they took the land from the Mexicans, and as you know, they mistreat the Latinos. So there you can connect the false prophet with someone who has a mouth that speaks great things, which is the United States, and performs great signs. And here in Revelation 19, the description of this false prophet continues here. In Revelation 9 verse 20, "And the beast was captured, and with it the false prophet." Why does it seem to distinguish between them? Because as I tell you, the beast has phases. It has the phase of Rome, it has the phase of the 10 empires, and then it has the phase of Babylon the Great, the harlot. And the beast was captured, and with it the false prophet who had performed great signs. As I say, the signs that the United States performed, I mean no other country performed signs Only the United States with its military force, so the beast here in this sense the beast is the Europeans in general and the United States, and this beast performed signs which they had deceived. Those who receive the mark of the beast, and they say that apart from the warlike signs with their technology, there will be more signs, so that people take this mark of the beast. I'm not going to go into details because of the censorship they have here on YouTube, but it is a type of technology that they have to insert into you with a medical procedure, and they had worshipped his image. These two were thrown alive into the lake of fire that burns with sulfur, and here it also connects to Daniel 7, that speaks of this beast that speaks great things and seemed greater than his companions. What happened to him here? It says the fourth beast will be a fourth kingdom. Here it describes its end. Here it is, but he will sit in judgment and will take away his dominion so that it will be destroyed and ruined until the end. Here is where it describes that this last beast was burned. I was looking because of the sound of the great words the horn spoke, the faction or the part of the beast that spoke. Bullshit is the United States, and here it says that this beast that spoke bullshit. And I then looked because of the sound of the great words that the horn spake, which is the United States. I beheld even till the beast was slain and his body destroyed, not just the United States, the entire Edomite forces, everyone including the beast, and given to the burning flame. There it is. So this false prophet is part of the fourth beast of Daniel, and the descriptions match. As you see, then the fourth beast is not the Catholic religion, and it is not the Vatican, and as you can see in this video, I am not going to play it for copyright reasons. You cannot see it, but what this man says is called Fritz Springmeier. What this man says, he says that all religions have a hierarchy, and at the highest level they are all controlled by the world elite, and he talks, for example, about Jehovah's Witnesses, that the leaders of Jehovah's Witnesses, it turns out that he is an Arab who is not even Christian. He is of the Jewish religion, an Arab Jew, and they say that of the Catholic Church as well, all religions of any flavor that you like, Catholic, Christian, Jehovah's Witness, that of Judaism, whatever you want, they all have at the highest level. They have a hierarchy, and at the highest level, they are controlled by the same global elite who are Satanists. You can see that on this channel here. And I think that's all there is to it. The false prophet is not Rome. It is not the Catholic Church. It is the fourth beast, especially more specifically, it is the harlot Babylon the Great, which is the United States.